This tutorial is going to show you how to finish off and do a certain amount of mastering and then export your final mix. To start off with, what we need to do is make sure that the area that you're exporting is highlighted via these two buttons, which are here. These are the locator position buttons. First thing I'm going to do is set this one at bar 4, because the first thing that happens is at the end of bar 4. So I can either drag it here or down here. I can actually just double click on it and type in the number 4 and press play, and then you'll see that when I go from there, you'll get the first bit of the. Then I'm going to go to the scroll to the end of my arrangement, which is going to be round about bar 55. So actually probably there, 5960-ish. And I'm going to set the right locator to 5960. So 60. Now when I play it will loop around that. It will also export the area that's highlighted now, which is important eventually. What I also need to do is do a fade out. So I need to press F3 to bring the mixer up. And then I do a very simple thing. Here, on this last one here that says stereo out, I press this button that says right, or W, and then I press play. And what I'm going to do is click on this fader here whilst it's playing, but not move it. Okay. So I'm going to press play now and hold down the fader on click and then let go and press stop. So play, hold down the fader, let go, stop. What this does is it creates a new channel, an input and output channel down here at the bottom of your arrangement. If I open this up, you'll see it's given me a line here. This line is the volume line. I need to now take it out of write and put it into read. This means the computer will now read it. Now the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that this is set to 0. So I'm just going to delete these and make sure that here you see the number is gradually going up. I want this to be on 0. Up top here, it says the value. All you have to do is double click on this and put in 0, and you get the right value. So it's now set at 0 decibels. Now I'm going to scroll along gradually, and as you've seen already, I've done a bit of a fade out. I'll show you how I did that. First thing I do is look for the end of the track, which at this point is bar 60, and just click on the blue line. It creates a dot. Then I'm going to click again and again. Now, first thing I'm going to do is pull this one down so it's totally faded out. Then, with this one here, I'm going to do totally faded out as well. We're going to make sure it's just before the end of the music. As you can see, the music finishes at bar 59. I'm doing it for 58. This one here, I'm going to make a bit more gradual, so it looks like that. So we get a nice decay on the fading out. What you'll find now is the computer will always read the fader. So when I press F3 again, watch what happens when we get to bar 58. It will start to fade out on the fader over here. Ready? Magic. It will also reset the fader back up to wherever it should be in the rest of the tune. This is the first process you need to do. The next process is to do a little bit of mastering. Now, when you master something, you've got to be very, very careful. I personally recommend that mastering is done by professionals rather than people in studios like me, because I definitely find that the best way to deal with mastering is to get somebody who's actually a skilled mastering engineer to do your work for you. But in this case, we're just going to do a little bit of amateur mastering, just so that we have a bit of a brighter sound and a bit of a punchier sound to the whole mix. So the first thing we're going to do is make sure that the inserts are on here. Then we're going to drop in on the stereo out, which is the final mix stage. The first thing we're going to add to it is a little stereo EQ. Now in EQ you'll find something that says Studio EQ. Select that. As you can see, it's got various buttons and bands. This, as usual, corresponds to the top part, the middle part and the low part. As you can see, if you turn them on, you can then move them. Now I'm just going to give the top end a little bit of air, round about 20k, so not a lot, 20, about here actually, put about this area here is going to have a little bit of, just so when it gets to about 20k it's got a bit of air in it. Similarly, I'm going to give the bass a bit more lift. Okay, so I'm going to turn the bottom one on, band 1, and give it a bit of a lift round the bottom, maybe about there onwards, like that. Now, what this does is give the mix a little bit of a tweaking. It gives it a little bit more flavour, and also it accentuates the high end and the low end, because a lot of the sounds in this mix are around about the middle. So if we have a listen, with it, just a little bit brighter, not a lot brighter. Next thing we're going to add is a multi-band compressor. Now we've got to be careful with this. Compressors, as you already know, add punch to the mix. So we're going to add a nice compressor, a multi-band compressor. There is actually another one called a vintage compressor, which will give a bit more warmth, but for this case we just want the multi-band one. Now you can either do this yourself, or we can choose a preset. If you do this yourself, I do recommend being very careful and not putting too much gain or ratio on it. So we just want to squash it slightly, just give it a bit more punch. Here we'll put the preset on, and if we look at all the categories, I'd choose, let's have a quick look, I'd probably choose a ballad master because it's a gentle one. As you can see, this is quite high because they give you a bit more emphasis on the top end. I'd also give the bottom end a little bit more carefulness, and we're going to do that in association with what we did already with the EQ. So we'll move this along so it reflects the EQ a little bit, and then we should get, so this is with, without. With a bit brighter, a bit more punchy. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add something called a limiter. Now a limiter makes sure that everything doesn't clip. Really important. Here it is here. Again, I'm going to use one of the preset ones. The light peak limiting, always go for the lighter ones rather than the harder ones, simply because they give a better sound, especially if you're new to this. That's with, without. It's a very subtle difference, but it gives it. Lovely, so I've done that, so I've got all my effects on here. The last thing I need to do now is go up to File, Export, Audio Mixdown, and I click on this, and I need to have a look at this. I'm going to change it so we have Dan Tainted Love. I've chosen a project file. Made sure it's an AIFF file or a WAV file. It's up to you which one you use. You could have it as a WAV file if you want. Going to do the output's going to be stereo out. Make sure the sample rate's 44.1 because that's what CDs work on, and the bit rate is 16-bit because again that's what CDs work on. Don't want these clicked, but I do want this one clicked. And what I do now is I export it. Unexpected error, fantastic. Once I've done that and it's actually worked, I'll try it on an AIFF. It's not going to work. Once I've done that, eventually it will give me a file which I can then drop into Windows Media Player or iTunes, and which I can now burn to CD. That's the way to export your final mix. Hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have. Bye bye.